Good morning. I'm DonnaRae Menard. I'm a local author, and this is my novel, Beneath the Fountain. This novel happens in St. Albans, Vermont, in Taylor Park at the Ladies of the Lake Fountain. Through the grace of Northwest Public Television and Joshua Pryor, I am going to be reading you a section of this book this morning. Now, we've already done a little bit, so you know you've been introduced to Lynn Steves. You know she works at the hardware store and she lives on the third floor of the Bulldog building. You also know that Hank Knapp his remains were found in the bottom of the fountain across the street. You've been introduced to some of the friends, and let's continue with what's going on. When I clocked out for supper, Harley was gone. He too had probably been on a lunch break, and at that moment was back to being a hotel clerk with a "may I help you" smile on his face. I needed some air. The dust, clatter, and overfilled ambience of the hardware store's jump into spring sale was getting to me. I walked out the bay doors, took a right, and stood exactly where the cruiser had been the night before. Biting the inside of my cheeks and averting my eyes from the fountain construction site which sat idle, I headed up the hill. Near the top, I was a block away from the home of my second bestie, Teresa. Instead of heading for her welcoming smile, I took a left. St. Albans is an old railroad city, and up here were the beautiful century-old homes of the Steel Horse Barons. Like old ladies at a tea party, sitting with their ornate hoop skirts spread around them on sloping lawns, surrounded with majestic oaks and maples, they graciously waited. Now more than a few were missing shutters, exhibiting flaking paint, and had sagging porches. I could ignore that and still see all the elegance that had once existed. It was more difficult to acknowledge that many of them had been divided into apartments by out-of-state owners who didn't care. On the corner of Congress and Prospect Streets, where one of the grandest of the wooden dames had stood, all that remained was a burned-out cellar hole. During the previous holiday season, a faulty chimney flue had allowed errant sparks to escape into the exterior wooden lining of the shaft. By dawn, the building was burned to the ground. Skewers of charred beams pointed toward the sky, and a few rusted carcasses of household appliances were in the rubble. I didn't want to look. I should have turned off on Lincoln Street, I said. Unable to stop myself, I walked up the drive and looked into the two-car garage where the doors had been left thrown open. One of the doors was laying on the ground, attached only by a bent lower hinge. I circled the cellar hole, offering silent condolences. The alarm on my phone sounded. It was time for me to return to the hardware store. I was standing in a flower bed from bygone years. Little sprouts of green were rising. No one had told them the house no longer stood. It was sorrowful. My eyes swept across the back lawn. Something sparkled among the brambles and vines of the previous year. Pushing aside the dried wood, I found a tiny glass building, like a child's cottage, perhaps a greenhouse, or just a summer seat to sit sheltered from hovering insect pests. How adorable. The corners of my mouth rose. I knew I had to run to get back to work, but I couldn't resist peeking through the mildew-stained windows. There among the broken clay pots, watering can, and a tipped wicker chair lay a woman. She wore a scarlet red gown that was bunched up around her thighs, had short fingerless gloves, and a wide slash where her neck should have curved like an elegant swan's. Now it was time to run and scream and panic and finally lean against a lamppost and dial 911. Chapter 5. The emergency dispatcher told me to stay where I was. I tried to argue that I wasn't far enough away yet, but she was having none of that. We were still verbally dueling when I heard a siren. From my spot, kitty corner across the intersection, I looked up at the burned remains. Even though I didn't see it, I knew exactly where the greenhouse was. With an effort, I inhaled enough oxygen to catch my breath and crossed back over to the bottom of the driveway. I'd wait there, tell the responding authorities where to look, and get back to work only a few minutes late. The first to arrive amid the flashing lights and the shrill scream of sirens, which of course alerted the entire neighborhood that there was trouble afoot, was Dean Kuhn. You couldn't miss the steam rolling out of his ears or off that nice, clean, bald spot centered in the middle of his dome. I guess I caught him at supper. Stepping back so his car could pull up the drive, I wiped the welcoming smile off my face before he told me to do so. "Hello, Miss Steves," he said. He didn't growl at me, but he was all business. "Hello, Chief Kuhn," I answered. 2 brief sentences, and the pace for the next hour was set. Tell me what you saw," he said. So I did, and I pointed him in the greenhouse's direction. "Stay here," Kuhn ordered. I nodded. Then as soon as his back was turned, I followed him across the grass. "He said stay there," my left brain screamed inside my skull. I was so close behind him, I could hear him suck air when he looked through the same glass panel I had. "Crap," he said. "I know," I whispered. He jumped and screamed like a girl. After that, he guided me away from the greenhouse, sat me down on a sooty piece of granite cellar stone, and ordered me not to move. With one eye on me and the other on the greenhouse, Chief Kuhn called for reinforcements. While Kuhn was otherwise involved, I called work and explained to Eric I had witnessed an accident. I asked him to tell Carly to stay, possibly until closing. No way was I leaving. It took 5 minutes for me to remember Shannon. I made a call, leaving a whispered message. "Body at the burnout on Congress Street." My new phone videos, so I aimed the phone at the greenhouse and pressed start. 2 more cruisers, an ambulance, and finally the medical examiner's van pulled in. I stood up, and Chief Kuhn immediately marched back in my direction. He then assigned Officer Menard to stay with me. I was to talk to no one until the chief interviewed me. The officer stood a few steps away, watching me out of the corner of his eye, unwilling to park his butt on the dirty stones. I was worried he stayed away because I had an offensive odor, but I knew that I had showered that morning. And then I wondered if he remembered me from the night before. I turned towards the action, intent on the people squeezing in and out of the greenhouse. Thus occupied, I didn't realize when Officer Maynard was again looking at me. "Is that phone recording?" he asked. No, it's not," I gulped. "Are you sure? Let's see it." He held out his hand. This wasn't good. He took a step closer. I leaned away, pulling the phone closer to my chest. It was on the tip of my tongue to tell him that it was private property and I wasn't going to give it to him. Then the medical examiner's assistant backed out of the greenhouse, holding one side of the black body bag while maneuvering through the narrow door. The ground on the back lawn was wet, and old weeds from the previous year created an entangling net. The assistant slipped and went down on one knee. Maynard jumped forward to help. It didn't matter that Chief Kuhn, the 3rd officer who was on camera duty, and one of the EMTs was right there. My goody two-shoes was gone for a moment. I tucked the phone away. "Whew, that was close," I said when he returned. Maynard nodded, watching the people removing the body. The second EMT was holding the other end of the bag. The last person out of the greenhouse was the medical examiner. She was short, with curly hair tied in a knot on the top of her head. Where Chief Kuhn and his officers had mud covering their shoes, the medical examiner was wearing knee-high rain boots with sterile booties over the feet. Her eyes roamed the yard. She hadn't seemed interested in me, which was fine. Just before Maynard had spotted my phone, I had seen the yellow Hummer pull up out of the corner of my eye. The driver could barely see over the steering wheel. Shannon had arrived. Maynard saw her now as she walked past the official vehicles. She had her camera raised and was filming the driveway. He motioned her to stay away from us. Shannon jittered back and forth like a hummingbird inspecting a new floral species. Sighing, I turned back to the greenhouse. After the body was on a gurney and strapped into place, everyone's attention returned to the small glass building. The officer holding the camera was a beefy woman, not afraid to order her boss out of the way as she approached the glass house. Though I thought the ship had sailed as far as collecting evidence because we had all trampled the ground, I respected her ability to let her supervisor know he was doing something wrong. The photographer entered the greenhouse again while the medical examiner stood in the doorway. I could hear the woman talking, and periodically the medical examiner's arm rose as she pointed to something out of my sight. "Let's have a seat in the cruiser," said Kuhn. He handed a roll of police tape to Maynard. Then the chief and I walked down the driveway, making a big circle around Shannon and her wide-angle lens camera. "How did you find this?" Kuhn asked me once we were in his car. I told him about being at work and needing to get outside. "I didn't specifically head up here," I said. "I was walking, came across a burn site and felt bad about it. It was a beautiful house. I remember thinking when it burned what a loss to the neighborhood it was." "So you came up here to see if you could salvage something?" Kuhn cut my rambling off. "That's absurd," I said. Irritation made me sharp. I hadn't come here to salvage, pillage, or steal anything. I resented the implication that I might be an ambulance chaser. "He didn't say that," Left Brain said. "He was getting there," Right Brain huffed. I was sort of grieving the loss, I said, looking past the chief towards the cellar hole. The house was so, I don't know, elegant. "Yes," Kuhn agreed. In a sad tone, it was. "Anyway, while I was up there, I saw the little building and I just peeked in." "Then what?" Kuhn asked. I turned back to him wide-eyed. "I ran like a rabbit." "Is your car back at the hardware?" Kuhn asked. "Go over to the station and wait for me there. You'd better tell them at work you won't be back for a while." "Done that." "And Lynn, don't talk to anyone while you're at it." I headed down the hill. Behind me, Kuhn yelled to Maynard to use the duct tape to encircle the entire lot, not just the greenhouse. Chapter 6. Cheen Kuhn must have called in a reservation for me while I was walking down the hill. By the time I arrived at the police station, 4 blocks away, the desk clerk was watching for me and called me by name as soon as I came inside. Other heads waiting turned in my direction. It didn't do a lot for my self-esteem. I surrendered my handbag and cell phone for the duration of my visit, walked through the metal detector, and was seated in a small room with one small, high, wire-covered window. Finally, when the desk clerk was sure I was secured, I was offered my choice of beverage. I spent a few minutes staring at the styrofoam cup, trying to figure out how to pick it up without leaving fingerprints. The final decision was that I'd just take the cup with me when I left. It didn't matter. It was lousy coffee. "Miss Steeves," Chief Kuhn breezed in. I quirked an eyebrow, a maneuver that had taken me weeks to master. "Lynn," he corrected. I wasn't interested in some formal hoo-ha with the chief that would shave hours off my lifetime. Belatedly, I'd realized that I wasn't going to get paid for not returning to work, and Kuhn had taken his sweet time getting back to me. "Let's go through what happened again." There was a notebook and a pen on the desk. He pulled them closer. I noted he was left-handed. Like other southpaws I'd met, Kuhn rolled his upper body into a ball and hunched over to write. That's what happens when a righty teaches a lefty. It also gives the impression the lefty is struggling. I wanted to offer to help him out, but I didn't dare. "She was wearing a Christmas dress," I said when he paused. "Do you think she'd been up there since the fire?" "What?" He looked a little startled. "No, I don't think so. I realized that too, that she wasn't wearing something for the weather or the season. I asked Jessica Mead, the medical examiner. She said the body had been up there for a few days, not months." Right about then he realized maybe he had spoken out of turn, gave himself a little shake, and returned to the matter at hand. "Why did you leave work and go up the hill?" Patiently, I retold the events while Kuhn scribbled. When he finished, he asked me to wait while an officer typed up the notes. "I want you to read them, make sure everything is accurate before you sign the document," he explained. "Do you think the woman's death is connected to what happened to Hank Knapp?" I asked. "Why would you say that?" Kuhn's face pinched up just like a mouse's. "Basically because that's 2 deaths in 2 days for me, and maybe for you. Neither one appears to be natural, and I'd like to believe that I won't be privy to a third one tomorrow." "It's probably a quirk of fate," said Kuhn. "Bad luck for you and for me as well." Nodding, I let him leave the room. It seemed wise not to mention I'd read enough murder mysteries to know he was going to have more interest in me than just my statement. Then there was my newest favorite reality show, the one where an innocent person is trapped into saying that they're the predator. I the styrofoam cup into my pants pocket. The table edge was filthy, but I rubbed it with my sleeve anywhere I thought I might have touched. Among the things I did or didn't do was tell him I had made a video. My fingers were itching to reclaim my phone and watch what I had recorded. As discreetly as possible, I scanned the room looking for a camera recording setup. I didn't find an actual camera, but I saw 2 small black cylinders attached to the ceiling with cables running out the butt and through the walls. It was probably a good thing the desk clerk had taken my phone. If I was messing with it, there was a chance someone might have seen the screen, or Kuhn would have confiscated the phone and found it by himself. I could wait, but not much longer. Just the thought of the video induced a hot flash, which of course led to me wondering where the restrooms were. Kuhn was back in a short amount of time. His note-taking was impeccable. He'd gotten it all down, and it was right. "Can I get a copy of this?" I asked, handing it back. "Why?" His eyebrows came together. Suspicion was rising. "It's my statement, and I want to have it. I won't share it with anyone. I'll even sign off on that." "Okay," he said. "How about the rest of the report?" "No." There's no harm in asking. It's not like he could take away my birthday or my right to drive. Kuhn gave me a copy of my statement, then sat in silence while I fidgeted, waiting for him to tell me that I could leave. "Lynn," he said. I looked up, half expecting him to pat me on the back for finding the woman in the scarlet dress. "You haven't lived in St. Albans very long, and to be honest, we don't find a lot of bodies here that aren't either natural causes or recognizable accident." My radar came up. I could hear a but or a however in his words. To have one person so close to 2 crimes, 2 homicides, in such a short time is unsettling. I nodded, and then I realized that he was talking about for himself, not for me. My stomach flipped. Is he arresting me? Vomit rose in the back of my throat. "No matter how I look at this, I'm torn," Kuhn continued. "I'm going to let you leave, but it's only fair to warn you that I'll probably be talking to you again." "I didn't find Hank," I said. "All I did was tell you that I saw some lights. It's like seeing a car before it hits a tree." "What?" he asked. "Am I a suspect?" I sounded similar to a roark of a croaking frog. "At this moment, you're my only suspect." He was dead serious. His words frightened me. I left the police station on shaking knees. The station is on the back side of the new court building, and the front door of the court is across the street from the alley behind the building where I live. It's where I park my car. Even that short distance was almost further than my shaky legs could carry me. How could I be a suspect? All I had done was look out the window. If word of this got around that the police were looking at me for 2 murders, I'd get fired. Claude is not a really understanding man. Once I got inside my building, I sat on the top step of the 2nd floor landing and played the video, twice. Inside my apartment, I watched it again. The mechanics of the crime scene investigation left a lot to be desired. The people involved were all over each other, trying to do everything that they had been trained to do or read about and rarely got to use. Goose flesh ran up my arm, so I shut the phone off and put it in a drawer where I couldn't see it. From the closet, I took out a notebook and worked on a sketch depicting the scene still in my head. I wondered about the woman. Where was her family? She appeared to be older, refined. Her part should have been played by a young girl with curly hair and bright red lipstick. I couldn't imagine her terror. Forcing these thoughts out of my head, I concentrated on the greenhouse scene, which had not been part of my video. Hopefully I'd gotten most of what was inside before the memory faded and morphed into an insidious nightmare that would keep me up later in the night. My second sketch was all about the woman, the way she was laying, the positioning of her head and hands, the hem of her dress, her shoulder-length silvery blonde hair which feathered across her eyes. I wasn't the type of artist who could do portraits. I did more of a Picasso thing, but it was just enough to jar my memory later on if I was trying to remember something. It distressed me that I couldn't remember a news bulletin about a missing woman in a party dress. My speculation came to an end because it was supper time and Rusty demanded to be fed. I'd skipped lunch, and while I dished out little friskies, my stomach growled at the odor of tuna and gravy. "Oh, just what I need," I said to my main man, "to start snacking with you." Rusty came to me as a tiny wet stray from the alley behind that building. I'd caught him, brought him inside, dried him off while he tried to use his bitsy claws and his squeaky mewling voice to get away. I didn't know where his mama was, and I didn't dare put him back outside. He was just so darn cute. I took him to the vets and made sure he wasn't sick, and then I lived in fear for 3 weeks that somebody was going to claim him. But no one came. He's a happy guy, and he gets plenty of food, a dry place to sleep, and all the adoration I offer. The phone rang. "Hey," it was Shannon. "One of the construction guys from the fountain site took some pictures you've got to see." "Yeah?" I asked, obviously interested. "I win," she sang. "Oh yeah, I win. Oh yeah, too cool." Too weird, I thought. "How come you left work early?" she asked. "Work? Crap!" I jumped up. "I have to go back. Where are you?" I hung up the phone without waiting for an answer and went sprinting down the stairs. After telling Carly, who had earned 2 hours of overtime, to leave, and Eric and Ted to ignore my presence and lock up, but not set the alarm when they left, I got down to opening computer files. I could tell Eric had questions, but unless I wanted to still be there at midnight, I didn't have time. The hardware had been closed for half an hour when Shannon rang the bell on the loading dock. When I moved to St. Albans, Teresa was my first friend. She took me with her to all of her volunteer function, which is where I met Shannon. Locally born and raised, 5'2" tall, black hair, and a fondness for colored hairsprays, which is just a minor issue in her list of eccentricities, Shannon eludes confidence. It's hard to tell what she does for a living because she seems to be everywhere you look. You know the type. She either changes jobs like people change underwear, or she just loves being on committees. "Thanks for the tip this afternoon," she said, walking past me into the building. The bag she carried smelled like burgers and fries. My stomach growled. "Would you be willing to be interviewed for the paper?" She was still playing the part originally crafted for Clark Kent. "I don't think so. Who taught you to be so polite?" My outstretched fingers were wrangling for the greasy paper bag. "There are legalities that need to be observed. How about if I put in that you don't want to be named?" I thought about it for a second, then I agreed. "Okay, here's what happened. I walked up the driveway, looked at the burn scene, saw the greenhouse, looked in the window, and called 911. That's it?" Disappointment put frown lines on her smooth face. "Yep." "What about the body?" she asked, probably hoping to eradicate some small fact that would give her a scoop. "Not going there," I said. It was obvious I had failed Shannon as a source. While she was running off at the mouth about my lack of observational skills, I ripped open the burger bag. "Just fries?" I asked. "No onion rings?" "Give me that back," she said hotly. "Nope, possession is 99% of the law." I took a big bite. With a pickle protruding from my lips, I said, "Tell me about the pictures. So now with your 99% burger, you want 1% photograph information?" I didn't even have to think about it. "Absolutely." Shannon is good at keeping secrets, but with me she had a sounding board. She could share and not worry that I was going to blab to the entire world. She pulled out her newest edition hotshot cell phone and opened it to exactly what I wanted to see. In the early morning light, I was looking over the edge of the fountain down into what would be the new bottom. The photo was a wide shot, but the second and third one were refocused closer to the body of the old man. He was laying on his side, neck tucked in with rebar running up behind the base of his head, torso curled, legs forward at the hip, knees bent. Each curve of his body was directed by the placement of a piece of rebar. His arms extended forward past his chin, and it looked like his fingers were wrapped in another metal upright. The picture was tiny. I thought I could see. There was a magnifying glass in Clyde's desk. Using that, I got a better look. "Holy cow," I croaked. "Is that duct tape holding him in place?" "How perceptive of you," said Shannon, pocketing the phone. "That's exactly what it is." Closing my eyes, I could picture the shelves on the sales floor filled with duct tape. Different sizes, colors, some of them even had specialty prints. In your opinion, asked Shannon, cutting into my thoughts, would this be 1 or 2 rolls? 1, I answered, definitely 1. Thank you very much for joining me today. Once again, I'm DonnaRae Menard. This is my book, Beneath the Fountain. And please let me know how you're enjoying this. You can find me at DonnaRaeMenardBooks.com. Have a great afternoon.